on the Palo Alto Hills, just looking out after sunrise and enjoying the view. There's, in the distance, you've got Mount Tamalpais. Then over here, you've got Skyline Ridge and Skyline Boulevard, one of the most beautiful drives in California. And then we're up kind of upper Palo Alto, and down there there's Woodside, and buried in this nice blanket of fog is pretty much the whole of the South San Francisco peninsula. And one of my favorite things to do when we're in the foggy part of the year is just get above it for sunrise. And we had a great sunrise this morning. It's absolutely stunning. And it's good to be back here to visit friends and help sort some things out. But the question that was coming up in my mind today was, who should move here? Why should anybody move here? Why would they care? What is it actually like? And what is it like here to be here, really? Now, a lot of people, the part of San Francisco they hear about is the 10 blocks near the Tenderloin in the center of San Francisco. And they hear about that on social media, and they form their entire judgment of the wider Bay Area based on the crime rate of 10 blocks, which is kind of like judging this whole scene based on kind of a tiny patch of pixels, which is pretty wild. And it's, I'm gonna just switch sides because the light will be easier. And that really doesn't capture what it's like being here in the Bay Area. The thing I say to everyone is not everyone should live here, nor should they feel that they have to succeed in tech. But if you want to learn about how tech actually works, then you definitely should make a pilgrimage. So I strongly recommend, if you're curious about technology, investing, startups, business, just about anything to do with capitalism, to be honest, I feel like this is Mecca and everybody should make a pilgrimage. So you really want to try and come, not just for a conference or a quick visit or a holiday or a week, but you want to try and come for as long as you can get a kind of tourist visa and really soak it up, ideally for 3 months at least. Because I think that's the only way to form a proper impression about how it actually is and not how you think it is. The aspect that really comes across when you're here is a sense of just kind of unbounded optimism. There's no other place in the world where people kind of allow young people to try things at such an astonishing rate, and where the kind of consequences for those things not necessarily working out as everybody hoped are very minimal. And that makes it really magical. So if you're kind of somewhat interested in capitalism, I think it behooves you to come and see where the best capitalists on planet Earth are. And at the end of the day, whether you like it or not, your life is defined by the people in this part of the world. Your interactions with technology, your interactions with screens, your interactions with algorithms, your interactions with databases, like all of that started here. And so your digital life is defined by the people that dwell like in this foggy area behind me. And I think if you're even somewhat curious about how all that came to exist, I would strongly recommend coming and checking it out. And to that end, it's not that everybody needs to live here for all of their lives. Like, a lot of people come here and do a tour of duty and then leave, and they bring some of the principles back to their either home city or home country. But your existence will thrive or decline based on the engineering efforts of the people in this valley. And so if you're thinking about your time on the planet, right, and maybe you've got 30 really productive years, and that productivity is augmented by software or artificial intelligence, or your computers or your phones, I would think it'd be worth spending a fraction of that time, 1% of that time at a minimum, coming out here and learning how it works. Because those 30 productive years that you have, maybe from your mid-20s to your mid-50s, that's when your kind of energy and experience and education is at the highest and your economic output is the highest. Like, to the extent that you can learn about how these systems, about how all these systems come to pass and the people behind them and the people behind the products that you use every day, I think it will just massively help you. And the earlier you can do it, the better. So the earlier on in your career that you can learn how equity-based compensation drives massive technological innovation, how the employment law in California, which allows anybody to go work for anybody at any time, leads to just fierce competition, and how well that works. And the overall atmosphere of intense competitive and creative energy leads to all of the products that you enjoy and all the services you enjoy and all the magical tools you enjoy in your digital life. And that's certainly how I felt, right? Every piece of software I was playing with as a teenager, every kind of movie I loved, from Star Wars to Pixar, every kind of experience that I would have on my computer would in some way, if I follow the rabbit hole down, be linked back to this part of the world. These few cities in this wider Bay Area, from San Francisco down to South San Francisco, onto Stanford and Palo Alto, Mountain View, and then Cupertino. And those places have shaped huge chunks of my childhood, shaped all of my adulthood, and they're doing the same to most of the planet, right? Like, whether it's your kids watching a Pixar movie, or being addicted to an iPad, or their favorite YouTuber, your children are growing up in a world that has been created in this foggy bank over here. And so even just as a parent, just as a kind of interested and curious parent, I think a visit is worthwhile. I think meeting some of the people here is worthwhile. I think just spending any amount of time here is worthwhile. And part of why I'm making this video is I'm hoping that at some point a young person's going to watch this. Here we go. Just had the first comment from somebody who has no idea what they're talking about. So Mr. John Smith says they're growing up in a dystopia. Well, I'm not so sure that that's true. I think that they are growing up in a digital way, whereas you grew up in a physical way. And those children some of them are growing up in a dystopia and some of them are growing up in heaven. But if you ask the kids who are able to kind of upgrade their lives and upgrade their brains and upgrade their prospects, they're having a great time. And so I'm not worried about the kids. And so really, if you're a young person and you're watching this video and you're slightly curious about the Bay Area and you ever want to consider moving here, I'd love it if you reached out to me. I'd love to try and help. And help those people who want to come out here and try it, give it their first go. And I'll be there. I'll be there to help you. And I'll be there to show you kind of all of my favorite places, show you some of my favorite lookouts, show you some of the best places for co-working, show you some of the most affordable places to stay, introduce you to as many of my friends as possible who might be interested in what you're interested in, and just try and make your landing into the Bay Area as magical as possible. Because to me, it took a few years, a few turns of the wheel to find all this magic, and I try and condense it down into as rapid experience as possible. I want it to be a kind of Burton's tour of the Bay and really give you a sense of how special this place can be as quickly as possible. And it's all here to play for. I think that you can kind of move your mind to Silicon Valley using Twitter or X. You can follow like some of the most intelligent people. You can start following a lot of the code bases and open source projects and some of the best engineers here. But when you actually make contact with the physical reality of the place and spend time in the bars, the cafes, the co-working spaces, and the physical kind of reality of what the bay actually is, you'll start understanding it on a much, much deeper level. And the degree to which people are able to focus here, the degree to which people are able to get access finance, and the degree to which people can kind of tap into their creative freedom is so special. And it's really magical. So I'm just going to finish up here with an interesting question that somebody asked just on the comments here. I'm still figuring out the best way to actually present the comments in the stream video. But somebody asked, whether humanity is just a stepping stone on this kind of technological evolutionary path. Well, I think I'm not an expert in kind of the lineage of humans and like where we came from, but my understanding is that there was a small tribe of kind of early Neanderthals that figured out tools way before many other different species. And their ability to kind of fashion spears, fire up fires, break camp and move camp quickly, just allow them to absolutely dominate other tribes. And I think that's pretty wild. And really where we are today in our movement as a species is we're making sand think, right? The people down there who are building OpenAI, Anthropic, and all of these other artificial intelligence systems, essentially it's silicon which can think. You can ask it a question and it'll give you a response. And that's a pretty wild state of affairs, to go from poking a few embers at fires and hunting basic animals and forming tribes kind of a couple thousand years ago, to the point where we are now, where we are sitting at our kind of glowing rectangles and asking it to help us with certain tasks, and it can kind of flexibly navigate around and help us with things. That's pretty remarkable. So I'm not sure there's any sense of replacement here, but there's definitely this sense of augmentation, and that with technological creation in its purest form, people are building tools to help people do things and make their lives better. And I think in its most dark form is when those algorithms, those systems, those notifications just end up as distractions or attractions for people who are losing like their sense of navigation. Lastly, I just want to make sure I address John Smith, who's coming up in the comments here and putting all kinds of insults in. You are a pathetic, God-fearing, uninformed, unintelligent, and annoying human being. And I hope that wherever you're watching this from, you have a much better day than you're having right now. Because right now, you're wading in on my stream where I'm just happily sharing a bunch of ideas and trying to fill my head with your negative thoughts. And it just isn't going to work. So to John Smith in the comments, who's been extremely rude, I will just say to you, I hope you have a better day. And I hope everybody here who's tuning in catches a nice part of their day at some point. Whether you can get a little bit of nature or a bit of exercise or something positive in. Because at the end of the day, how many sunrises and sunsets are we going to see before we never get to do it again? That's what I always think about. All right, it's been really fun checking in, and I really enjoy doing this. It's just meant to be a kind of thought diary, and thank you for taking some time with me. And if you subscribe, that'd be much appreciated, because then we can stay in contact. And if any of you are visiting Silicon Valley, please let me know. I'd love to be a tour guide. All right, I'm going to wind it up because my battery's low and I'm going to go for a walk. Cheers.